Yep, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on building a ripper for the new excavator. And I think what I'm going to do is build a 2-finger ripper. And I got some bucket teeth around here someplace we're going to throw on the tines. Because we bought some property in Virginia and it was clear cut somewhere between 7 and 10 years ago. So we got a bunch of 12-foot trees. Most of them are anywhere between saplings to about probably 5 inches round on a good portion of the property, and we're gonna have to pull a lot of those out because we want some pasture land. So I'm just trying to prepare myself. I've got a 3.5 ton excavator, and I just want to kind of prepare myself in case I encounter something that needs uprooted. And then also this is kind of just an investment because I do some excavation on the side, and I plan on getting into that more. So this will just be another tool in the old toolbox. So we're gonna get started. We got our cardboard, and I've got some measurements on my phone for it's a Sany SY35U excavator. So I've got the measurements for the bucket ears on my phone, and but we want to try and make it look as kind of professional as possible. Instead of something like thrown together, like, you know, homemade, even though it is homemade. This is my home. So we're gonna use some cardboard and go kind of trace out the ears that are on the buckets that I have out there and just kind of copy that shape. I did a little test cut the other day with my Richmond. It's essentially a fancy cut 500 with a pilot arc, and she's kind of on her last leg, but she just won't die. So until she dies, I can't replace her. When I do replace her, it's going to be something blue. But I mean, that's a pretty nice cut through 1/2 inch right there. So we're gonna use that plasma cutter to cut out whatever shape we decide we're gonna go with on this ripper. But this is 1/2 inch AR400, and I think what we're gonna do is double stack on and do 2 ears, or two tines, 2 rippers, whatever you want to call them. So that should be plenty. And then, like I said, those teeth on the bottom. All right, so I just came into this mag drill. It's my brother's, but he doesn't do a whole lot of metalworking right now, and I'm doing a lot of metalworking, so kind of got it on loan. It's a nice Haugen? I don't know. I've always called it Haugen. This is like a real nice, older, top-of-the-line mag drill. And I've been looking at them for a while, but I've been looking at like cheaper ones. Even the DeWalt one is like $800. So when I lose this one, if I ever lose this one, I'll probably have to get myself one, because from everything I've seen, these are very nice to have around, but quite the investment. And then I just ordered some of these just off-brand Amazon Annular Cutters, which is what they use as like the drill bit. We're gonna get this set up, and why I want to use this is I left some extra material here because I want to put a round cut in along this line, essentially making teeth. They won't be super sharp teeth, but they'll be like super rippy teeth. And that's just to get through roots and whatnot. So we're gonna get this mag drill set up on this plate and then start drilling these holes every so often, and see which one of these we're gonna use. Somewhere probably between the 3/4, 7/8, 1 inch. So let's get her set up and see what she does. So looks like we got the center punch pin here, and then all the different cutters. Like I said, from 1/2 inch up to 1 inch. Let's see. Ooh, that is sharp. Got me already. Yeah, I think the 1 inch is what we want to go with. I think we could cut a bunch of teeth out like that. I'll put a line on there that I want to follow, kind of mimicking running parallel to that line, but about 3/4 of an inch in, and we'll cut these teeth in every so often, and I think we'll be set up pretty good. So these are the set screws. You got 2 flats. You got 2 flats on here, and it slides up in there, and then you got your set screw on each side. Hold it in, keep it nice and centered, and then we got the center punch in there, and that's supposed to punch out the slug that we create after we drill through. So we'll start into it, and then we'll move it off the edge of this wood, and then we'll continue the last little bit there. And we're also going to keep it lubricated. I got some oil. So that's a nice clean cut, and I've never cut through 1/2 inch steel, or really even 1/4 inch steel with like a regular drill bit that easily or that quickly. So let's go ahead and shift her down. I think we're just gonna skip cut her width and then cut again. I think that'll be the easiest and the most uniform. Alright, so we got our teeth cut. We started using a 1-inch annular cutter on the mag drill over there, but we burned through two 1-inch cutters, and that was 1.5 inch annular cutter. We got 2 holes out of it before it toasted. And you can see over there I have my makeshift oiler. It's a mist oiler, but it puts out a pretty good stream, and I was also pumping manually for a lot of the cuts. So before we got finished with this one over here, we got to here, and then I had to plasma these out, which is why they're way less pretty, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted them all to be like a nice machined edge. So much for that idea, I guess. And then I wasn't sure if I could do a gouge into here, or like a plunge cut and then cut a 1-inch. So I cut in here, which I'm not too thrilled about, but I think it'll be fine. But this one I decided, you know what the heck, we'll just try and do a gouge. And then I was actually able to do that, so oh well, now I know 1/2 inch I can gouge out. So now what we're doing is we're gonna weld this to this. This will be the inside of this finger, and we're gonna weld it on there pretty solid, and then we're going to put this, ooh, that's hot, hot, that top plate on, and start putting these things together. So let's get to welding. This is real ugly down here, but it's gonna all be welded up, so it's not even gonna be noticeable. That's gonna get welded on there, and then you can put teeth on it. So, and these are the teeth I have laying around, a couple of these, so we're going to use these. I think they'll work pretty good for the purpose. Once we get a couple spots kind of tacked in, we'll get rid of this piece of plywood before we start a nice little fire in here. All right, so I've been doing some land clearing. The skid steer gets most of this stuff. Some pretty big tree roots here. But finally came across a tree that the skid steer just couldn't get. We're using a grapple, which has been working awesome. We got tracks on the Thomas T175, and things just a monster. Cleared all this in about, really I've only been clearing for about 2 days. And this whole area was cleared, and then I started stacking the pile here. The excavator is a little slow at clearing, just compared to the skid steer, because that skid steer is doing like 6 foot wide swath of just clearing through. I kind of hold it up halfway, you know, about 4 feet off the ground, and then I just push everything over and then come back underneath and then just kind of roll it onto itself, grab it all, and I'm dragging out like, these trees aren't huge, but just dragging out like, you know, 3 to 6 trees at a time, and then bringing them over here and throwing them on this pile. So this is 2 days of clearing pretty much right here. I say pretty much because I cleared kind of the driveway in, which is a couple 100 feet, and maybe like 200 feet. I cleared that separately on a different day, but I didn't really have anywhere to put the stuff out there, so I kind of made little piles. As I cleared in, I got in here and then just kind of like started clearing out this area and then just stacking stuff on. Then I had to go move all those piles to get them on here, because the land is just so full of this. I mean, every square inch looked like this, but now you can kind of see what we have going on. So, but we've made it to a point where we found a tree that the skid steer can't get out. So my dad's kind of been tinkering with the ripper. I've only pulled 1 tree out with it just to kind of see how it worked, and it worked well. So we're going to take it over and we're going to use it to get that big old tree. Well, it's not really a big old tree. It's like one of these root clusters with like, I don't know, 4 or so trees sticking out of it. So let's do it. Why is it not red so I can run the dog? So that worked pretty well. A little bit of practice, I'll be a lot better at it. It's probably only the second or third time I've used the ripper, but that's quite the root, and it's going everywhere, you can see, so it was not easy to dig out. And I smashed it up with the skid steer for quite a while and it wouldn't budge, so a couple of good tap roots in there, but got it all out, and we'll just keep practicing with it. I feel like I put a fair amount of force on it in pretty much all directions, and she's still square and straight, so I think the 1/2 inch AR400 steel, and then these kind of, I don't know if these cutting edges really did anything other than look kind of cool, but maybe they did. My brother and I have about 5 hours in this machine. Most of mine is digging for the install of the culvert in this property, and his this is kind of early on in his practice with it, but he's been using the ripper more than I have, and he says that it works really well and he likes it. The two fingers are really nice for picking stuff up with that thumb, where I think one it'd be a little more difficult. And we kind of reached the capacity of the hydraulics on this machine a couple times. It's only 3.5 ton. And a lot of these root systems go all over the place. So he eventually gets this one, and anything we threw at this machine that weekend, it did really well. So overall, I'm really happy with the way this ripper turned out. And I don't think there's a single thing I'd change about it. I don't think the teeth are that useful, really. I didn't really notice them cutting, because it's not like you can really use a sawing action, but maybe they helped like grab one of the roots and pull it up a little bit better than if they weren't there. It's always tempting to take a bigger bite than you really should and try and get that whole trunk out, but the key is to dig around these, because the root system's all over the place, like I said, and then you can get the trunk out. Looks like you might need to come in from like this side right here. I can see the root probably comes, the mass of it comes over this direction here, so we'll let him know that. So a little backstory here. I'm currently in Colorado. My brother and I bought properties next to each other in Virginia,
And the intent with mine is I plan on moving onto my property and building a homestead, and then on his we'll probably build like a cabin, so when he comes to visit, he has a place to stay and kind of hang out, kind of a little getaway for him. My property has a chunk of it, about 8 acres, that was clear cut from what I can figure about between 7 and 10 years ago. So a lot of the trees grew back. It was unmanaged, so a lot of the trees grew back to what's now like 12 feet tall. About probably the larger ones are probably in the 7-inch diameter range, all the way down to these saplings and undergrowth. As you can see in my backdrop here, I'm in the process of moving because my family is moving to Virginia from Colorado. As we prepare the property, we're going to have to rent someplace else. We're not really interested in living on a camper on the property right now, and that could change in the future. But at this time, we're interested in renting a house because I have a 1-month-old boy and a 4-year-old daughter. So we could cram down into a camper, but it's just not something that we want to do at this time. So, but my plan is to continue clearing this 8 acres, and it's going to be where the house sits, where the shed sits, and then where we can have, I'll run probably 2 head of cattle in there. So a little also backstory on the machine. I literally just bought that machine like 2 months ago, and I had it here in Colorado for the first 2 months of its ownership. And I just was using it to move heavy stuff around the yard because the skid steer had already been moved to Virginia. But of course I couldn't stop building heavy stuff, even though half of my garage was moved across the country. So I was using the excavator mostly just to move stuff around. So I think it's got like a whopping 13 hours on it right now. And some of that was digging the culvert. Some of it was my brother operating it with that ripper. But that ripper being a lot more future videos of the land clearing, because we have a lot more to do. I think, so I did 2 days by myself clearing with mostly just a skid steer because it's a real pain in the butt to run one machine and then get out and jump into another. So if I came across something that the skid steer didn't want to deal with, I would just leave it and then come back and get it later with the machine, or when my brother showed up, he jumped in the excavator and ripped it out of the ground. Yeah, I cleared quite a bit by myself, and then my brother showed up a couple days later after I got the culvert in, which should be in a video, and he jumped in the machine and he was ripping stuff out of the ground. As you can see in the last clip there, he'd be ripping stuff out of the ground. I'd go ripping stuff out of the ground, and then I'd take a break from clearing myself and go kind of clean up all of his trees laying out everywhere, and then take them to the pile. And I find backing up with the big loads in the claw or the grapple, reversing, because if you drive forward and they kind of contact the ground, they'll want to sweep around and then they get in your tracks, and then your tracks rip them out of the gripper. So as you can see, I was kind of backing up with the skid steer, but a lot of that will come, like I said, in a future land clearing video because there's a lot more of that to do. But this one is mostly just about the ripper. As I've said, there's not a single thing I think I'd change about it. I like the two finger, the 2-tine gripper, but I do wonder if one tooth, one tine, one finger, whatever you want to call it, I do wonder if one would, on that machine, would kind of cut through stuff a little bit easier than 2. So there might be a 1-finger ripper coming in the future just to see. But like I said, I'm shutting, the garage is shut down here. This is like all my house and stuff in the garage. So the garage is pretty much already moved to Virginia and put in storage. So that's going to be like, I don't know, months from now, maybe even like next year, that we'll do the 1-finger ripper if that's a thing. But I'm really digging the 2-finger ripper, and I think it's going to work, well enough for what we're working on. So that wraps up this video. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.